moving next to a utility which historically, forgetting my microphone, historically you would be, one assumes somebody who would want people to use as much energy as possible, so you two might not be comfortable sitting next to each other. However, I understand that that's not your viewpoint at all, and you see business opportunities in a world of greater efficiency, so perhaps you can give us...
Exactly. Right now. Yes, from the utility point of view, I completely agree with that energy efficiency, it could be bad for us because people is going to consume less, but this is not the best way to look at that, because for example, in the transport sector, they are moving from gasoline to electric. So right now, electricity is going to have a big percentage in the global mix of energy in the near future. So maybe the customers are going to consume less, but with a global view, maybe this is not the main perspective. We think that electricity is going to be a major role in the future in the global mix of energy. And talking about technology, particular, we are focusing in our company in big projects related to smart grids. For us, smart grids are the key issue in order to get that energy efficiency in thinking in the whole system. Because right now there are a lot of changes in the sector. There are distributed generation. We have energy storage as well. We have a lot of different kind of possibilities for the consumer. Even the word prosumer, it's starting to rise. So smart grids for us are the best way to manage that, to combine the possibilities to generate in a distributed way, but also in a centralized way, and do that and harmonize that in the optimal way for the system, and that means energy efficiency improvements.
I'm just going to lead to the end of the panel, because I think you have the missing link in a sense, because you have Philip Shinsbury, who has a background in electricity engineering, electrochemical engineering, and therefore car batteries. So here's the big demand for the future.
Yeah, I think that clearly, we in the car industry, we were quite used to developing gasoline and diesel cars globally. So 95% of the cars worldwide are using either gasoline or diesel fuel. So clearly, we have a very strong addiction to oil. And I mean that energy efficiency means also energy security, increasing the energy security by decreasing the importation of oil, and on the other hand, we have to increase and to diversify the energy mix in our vehicles. So electricity is one of the solutions, and it is really one of the most promising solutions because it's available everywhere using local, domestically resources. So we certainly think that electric vehicles will help to both diversify the vehicle lineup that we will propose to our customers, and to strongly improve the energy efficiency of the global fleet. So that's something very important.
And I think you drive an electric car. Can you tell us what effect that has had on own electricity?
Yeah, in fact, to tell the truth, I don't drive an electric car, but my wife drives an electric car daily, every day for her work, because she's using this car to go to work every day. It's about 30 kilometers from home, so it's very convenient. And I can tell you that at the very beginning it was very surprising for her to switch from a conventional car to an electric car, and now she is absolutely convinced that this is a solution which is widely available and great. I use from time to time an electric car, but it is sometimes very difficult. For example, today, I was not on the road to Paris, but on the road from Paris, and this would have been more difficult for me to use an electric vehicle today.
Going back to Finland, I think you've just made a very big investment. In which would you like? I know you make a mention of it in the note, but can you tell the audience about the biggest European biomass?
Yes, so
put it in your
Metsä Group, we are a forest industry company producing paperboard, pulp, tissue, and mechanical wood products for buildings and construction. And as you mentioned, we've just decided this April 1.2 billion euros investment in a new bioproduct mill in central Finland, which is the biggest investment ever in forest industry in Finland. And by the way, this new mill will also be a major bioenergy producer, producing about 2.5% of the electricity needs in Finland. It will also be the world's most efficient pulp mill, which is the core product of the bioproduct mill. So really going with the cutting edge technology and most efficient technology to the global markets. We will export a big share of our products to China from this new mill.
Am I right that you actually produce your own energy, or do you need some from the smart grid and the utility as well?
Yes, we are a very energy intensive industry, consuming all in all about 20 terawatt hours of energy, electricity, heat and fuels, and 86% of our energy is biomass based of the fuels we used, and we produce always locally the heat needs and electricity we produce ourselves and also purchase from the markets. And coming to the energy efficiency aspect, so I see this from two angles. First of all, we are improving continuously our efficiency of our production processes. So we've improved about 6% our efficiency since 2009. And our target is to improve by 10% by 2020. And we've been working on this systematically since 2006. And there's still some potential remaining, but it's also requiring big investments. So for me, we need a balanced regulatory framework where we as businesses can then decide on which areas we allocate our capital and human resources. So energy efficiency is just one part of the overall resource efficiency and keeping our competitiveness. Then the second angle on energy efficiency is new products, more energy efficient products. And with this, I mean, for example, our paperboard products, which are the most lightweighted overall, and these then, since they are so lightweighted, they consume less energy when they are being manufactured further to packages and then transported in the value chain. So by this, our new products, we enable our customers to consume less energy.
On the subject of investments and providing the money, I think that you actually can cap the 1.2 billion euro.
Yeah, I think the investment by car manufacturers on vehicle fuel efficiency is absolutely huge. Just on electric vehicles was 4.3 billion euros for the Renault-Nissan alliance in the past 6 years. So it's a huge amount. And if you count all the investments we've made on vehicle fuel efficiency, it's about a factor 10 more. So, it's a huge amount of money. But I want also to outline that for a car manufacturer, we are expected, of course, to deliver more fuel-efficient cars because for our customers, this is something very important. But we have also very strong commitments on our manufacturing plants, because this is also something quite significant. So we have an internal commitment in both Renault and Nissan on the carbon footprint, which is reducing the carbon footprint. And if I take the example of Renault, it's about 3%. It's 3% improvement of carbon footprint every year. So it's about the double of what we have seen just previously, which is 1.5 or 1.6% per year in the next period of time. So, and this means that we improve the energy efficiency of our manufacturing plants. This means that we have actions on our supply chain, on our logistics, and on all the different steps about the car manufacturer. It's not only related to vehicle fuel efficiency, but it's a corporate responsibility all along the production and the life cycle of our products.
So, I mean, the message that I'm getting is that energy efficiency actually sort of has to become a way of life. But what you told me earlier is that it's very hard to make people come up with the upfront investment because, yes, you're doing it, but supermarkets who have very tight margins.
That's correct. I think there is a lot of rules regarding the single product or the single component, but in essence, at the end, it's the system. If you, for example, look at the possibilities to combine heating and cooling, cooling or air conditioning in Europe is only counting for about 1% of the energy consumption, while in heating and cooling, while heating is 80%. So this is totally the opposite in California, where 80% is going into air conditioning and not so much into heating for known reasons. By combining these two technologies, there is a huge opportunity for energy efficiency, prevention of use. Second, energy storage, which is a precondition for growing the renewables here. And I was just coming back from California last week where, just to give you an example, there is a very, very, very nice public tender out there to invest in energy storage. And companies are starting up. They are creating solutions for storing energy, not only in electrical cars, which there's a lot of Teslas over there in Santa Barbara, but also in ice banks, in pumped hydro, in smaller solutions, which enable California to be up to 60% renewables by 2020 something. We have the same issue in Germany, as you know, that we have the power in the north, and we have to switch off wind energy and solar every other day. And then we have negative power prices because the people cannot store the energy or the consumption is in the south. You can use existing installations, like, for example, supermarkets, in order to support that. Supermarkets is only a few people you have to talk to. It's not 10,000. If you want to reach 80% of all the supermarkets, you talk to 5 companies. So it's not 10 million private home users you have to convince to invest. You can talk to them to use their refrigeration equipment in order to produce hot water, pump it back into district energy. There is huge opportunities in combining these two technologies in order to be more energy efficient. And we have nice examples where you can save up to 50% energy in a supermarket by just combining these things. And then it's not the end. You can add solar, you can add floor heating. The problem, though, is that there is too many different stakeholders. There's utility companies, and even the utility companies are cut in 3. There is the producers, the network people, and then the people at the final point of customer. And that makes it very difficult. And we would really like to see more lighthouse projects, and we are developing some of them on our own in order to convince the public, but also the policymakers there is lots of opportunities without inventing anything new and start right now.
But you actually seem to be saying that well, maybe you're not, tell me, but the energy efficiency law that the European Union has come up with, is that actually not a strong enough signal for you?
I think it is very much, and just last week we were discussing in our European Partnership for Energy Efficiency, APE, our strategy. I think we very much appreciate what's going on here. We are also very much in favor of clear rules, long-term rules, plannability. what I try to say is that we need to look a little bit more into the combination of different things in order to create solutions. It is not sufficient to optimize single components of the whole system. We need to look more into the combination and the cooperation of the different things. And here we would like to have a serious discussion how we could do that.
Okay. Then.
Yeah, if I may comment on this energy efficiency regulation and directive. As I said already earlier, in my view and in our company's view, we need a balanced regulatory framework, and for us, really the CO2 emission reduction is the overarching goal. And we should not implement too tight additional goals or legislation, because as we companies are competing on global markets, we need sufficient freedom to allocate our resources most efficiently. And always it is not the energy efficiency investment that has the highest priority in order to remain competitive. But as I mentioned earlier today, I really see energy efficiency is the most important way to combat climate change. So I'm in no way saying that we should not work on this area seriously.
Okay, and from the utility,
Yeah.
the investment needed.
No, the problem here is that, as you said before, and I agree with you, you have three different business lines that are interconnected. Two, usually, depending on the market, are liberalized, generation and retail, and usually the distribution, it's regulated business. And the problem here is that, for example, if you, there's some misunderstanding related to smart grids, because people relate smart grids with smart meters, and it's completely different animal. Smart meters it's the first step that you need. Is basic to have good information about the customer demands. But smart grid means automation of the medium voltage, means automation with certain purposes, means that you need to have price, or more or less a price for certain kind of services that you are going to provide to the grid. For example, thinking about distributed generation, for example, if you are going to supply just megawatts, it's a price, but if you are going to contribute to stabilize the voltage, or for example the frequency of the grid, you need to have another price. And the problem here is that it's a little bit complicated, because you are mixing liberalized assets with regulated assets, and what we need is some kind of commitment from the regulatory bodies in order to think about that in the same way that we are thinking, because it's not a matter of money, it's a matter of also of commitment, because. Yes, I look.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking, do you not talk to each other?
Why you say so?
Well, no, I'm assuming that you do, but what kind of commitment are you wanting from the regulatory?
For example, we have assets in the UK, we have assets in Spain, we have assets in the US. In all these three markets, we have three different projects related to smart grids. In the US, for example, we have different issues than in Europe. But for example, in UK, the meter belongs to the retail company. In the rest of Europe, mainly, for example, in Spain, the meter belongs to the distribution company. That information in the meter, who is the owner of that information? Because that information in the meter, it's part for the customer, and the customer can use that, but it's also part of the operational side of the grid, the distribution grid. Mm. So we need somebody to sit down with us and say, no, and it would be better if we did that in a European level. Then in whole Europe, we have distribution grid, we have generation, we have distributed generation. In Germany, it's incredible. The amount of solar and wind that you have, incredible, and distributed a lot of solar. So the issue here is that if we want to go ahead about the energy efficiency of the system, it would be good to talk and to decide certain kind of rules, clear rules, in order to move forward. Otherwise, we are going to talk about, because the technology is available right now. We have the technology. We need to decide how we are going to deal with that. That is the main challenge for us, from our point of view.
Okay, sorry, would you like to? And then I'll give the audience a quick chance if anybody's... There will be questions at the end, but you can also be part of the...
Okay, just one comment on this. I think that, first of all, it's very important to have one, as you said, one overarching goal. I mean, this is something important. And if we say it is climate change and CO2 and energy efficiency, that's fine. But then we have to understand that behind that, there are also some additional co-benefits, as highlighted in the keynote speech, and such as, for example, on energy security, on health and air pollution. And I think we have to be very careful not to have two conflicting goals. There should be one single overarching goals and make sure that we are able to achieve a target. Because if we have too many targets and too many goals, then we could have some conflicts. Just to take one example, we all remind what happened with biofuels in the recent period of time, and many car manufacturers developed flex fuel solutions in Europe, but this was obviously not the right market for this. So I think that's something very, very important. We need visibility, we need clear goals, and concerning vehicles, clearly we have a strong market push, because our customers are expecting fuel-efficient technologies, fuel-efficient vehicles, and affordable fuel-efficient vehicles. So it's a question of competitiveness rather than of regulation.
Yeah, if I may continue a bit on that, fully agree that we only need a greenhouse gas target. That is finally the challenge for us in this globe, and we will be in a couple of decades 9 billion people living on this globe. So how to meet the consumption needs for this amount of people, that's a huge challenge, and energy efficiency is one solution, resource efficiency is another one. But coming back to this regulatory framework, so in my view, one important insight for me is that the regulators should also not pick the winning technology. So we should leave it to the market to select the winning technologies, whether they are electric cars or biofuel cars or other forms of transportation. So avoid also over guidance in terms of picking the winning technologies.
Okay, thanks. I just want to check whether anybody quickly wants to ask anything from the audience, or whether you just want us to continue. Are there any questions out there yet? I don't think there are, so we'll stay here, but I don't want you to feel excluded. So,
I would have a comment.
Yes?
Yeah, I think I'm fine with having an overall target of total energy consumption, but I also think it is important that we have flexibility targets. If somebody is flexible, like if you and your factory are flexible and if you should switch off 20% of your energy consumption, or you and your mill, what do you get for it? Nothing. Yeah? If you have too much wind energy or not enough wind energy, and you have this daily consumption in Europe or in a particular country in Europe, it is very difficult to regulate that. So entities, private people, the smallest level, small companies like supermarkets, industrial companies, there is no market for flexibility, which, by the way, is the case in the US. In the US, they have clear incentives for flexibility, and if you offer 10% energy flexibility, you get a discount of 10% on your energy bill. So suddenly you have a market excuse me, a market for where people are investing in microgrid solutions, in local solutions, and what you can regulate on a local level. You don't have to transport in the grid, which is, by the way, the best. What you don't consume is even better. That's also clear. And I think in all fairness, we also need a little bit more, I wouldn't say rules, but incentives for flexibility. Otherwise, nobody will invest in smart solutions at a particular place.
I think you're saying that nobody would do anything without some kind of target. And back to efficiency, we had a huge legislative debate here, which has, I think, changed things. So you only want one ETS goal and one carbon market. And sometimes people say energy efficiency is an enemy of the carbon market, but is that fair? I mean, surely you need more than just an ETS at the moment until we have an ETS that works.
In my view, ETS works very well. It works fantastically. We are reducing CO2 emissions in Europe in line with the targets by 2020, and the market price should come down as there is less demand for CO2. And energy efficiency is a very important way to reduce CO2 emissions, and I fully agree that we need more smart solutions, smart grids, more flexible consumption, and in a way we are already being flexible. This electricity price is driving our operations in energy intensive industries. So if the price is too high for electricity, then we close down our mill for a period. But we are so capital intensive that we need to keep the investments running all along. So I'm personally quite cautious of having this additional regulation, at least for the globally competing industries, because if other parts of the world don't have respective regulation, then this can lead to distortion in the markets or weaker competitiveness, and carbon leakage is one issue that has been widely discussed and agreed that this is an issue. EU doing actions on its own, and I'm glad that the policies are taking this into account.
And the flip side, though, is that Europe does need to lead in terms of innovation, and you are all saying that you have got innovative techniques which, to an extent, are bred of the environment we're in, with high energy prices and a strong commission. And, you know, China will catch up. They are waking up. They have a declared INDC, even if they haven't actually. But we're not meant to be talking about the world. We're meant to be talking about Europe. But
I would like to throw a new way of thinking to this, reducing global emissions, or at least a new idea. Since we have the lowest emissions in Europe in terms of CO2 emissions per kilowatt hour of electricity, so in fact, if we would produce more in Europe for the global consumption needs, so this could lead to a globally lower CO2 emission. So comparing, for example, with China, there's about 2 times higher CO2 emissions for produced electricity than we have in Europe. So actually having more energy consumption in Europe for the global consumption needs could have a positive effect for our greenhouse gas reduction target. And this aspect, to my knowledge, has not been recognized much in Europe. So we are only squeezing our own consumption, but not thinking globally that how can we meet the consumption needs of 9 billion people with least CO2 emissions.
well, I think there are probably reasons why. I mean, the logistics for a start, the energy footprints, which we're all talking about here. And I think in your endeavours to be energy efficient, you're looking beyond mere energy and how much energy is used in the processes as well. So the materials that you use, do they require a lot of energy to make them for your?
I believe so, yeah. It is brass, it is copper, it is steel, and of course we are sourcing them from well-known suppliers. If we were using paper, we would most likely source it from you. You are sourcing something from us.
Yes,
yeah?
yes. Frequency converters, gladly.
Exactly, yeah.
I still want to know what they are.
I explain you later. Of course, it's very important that you have a policy towards your suppliers. So not only if they're producing at the right place with the right tools. I think we are also auditing our suppliers regularly. But in essence, we are working on a new global manufacturing footprint where we are producing closer to the consumption. A couple of years ago, there was a focus on having one focus factory. You know, you produced all your products of a certain type in one factory, and then you spread them all over the globe using a lot of transportation. The ashes problem a couple of years ago with the Vulcan from Iceland and strikes in France or Germany have made the industry thinking a little bit different, but also as the industries in China, in India and elsewhere grow, it is much more efficient to source locally. But here it's then important that you have the right suppliers and that you push for the right processes within these suppliers. But I have to say, and I'm very much around in India and in China, I think we are completely underestimating the dynamics which is out there. And if you look at a modern Chinese factory, I would say it's much more modern and less energy consuming than a typical factory here. We shouldn't be so arrogant here. And the problems China has, they are historical problems, and I think they are doing a lot. And we can see that also in our daily business in China.
I agree with the China. What I was referring to is the electricity consumed at these mills in China. So that for production of that electricity, China is causing much more CO2 emissions per kilowatt hour than we are causing here in Europe. So we are really reducing our carbon footprint, but to bring it to the global benefit, we should use that energy and with energy efficient mills.
For a point of view, it's interesting, for example, what happened in Spain. Because, for example, in Spain, I think it was one of the countries that was more committed to renewables in the first period. And for example, the way that we manage wind, I think it was much better than solar, because during the feed-in tariffs period, very generous feed-in tariffs periods that we enjoy in Spain, we use that also to encourage local companies to manufacture as well and to contribute to have the knowledge, the know-how, the technical knowledge, even if we are paying for that. I'm saying that because, for example, in the solar industry and the solar period in Spain, I think that we were one of the countries that we started sooner with the feed-in tariffs about solar technology. We had the sensation that we pay we increased the technology in China and the know-how in China, in the United States, but not here in Europe. So it's quite a paradox for us, because it's a completely different thing than in wind. But in solar, I think that we pay for other countries' technology, and we pay very generous, by the way. So, it's a mix of things, because, for example, for a utility company, the consumption of primary energy, the consumption of gas or consumption of coal, it's okay, but because it's more efficient in terms of more efficient economically talking. But as a company, we decided, I think that we have a very convenient energy mix from the beginning, but we decided to don't go through the usual path of most of the utilities. And we decided to support the renewable companies, and that's why right now we are world leaders in wind energy generation. And I think that it was a very bold movement that time. But right now, there's a lot of companies that are doing more or less the same than us. But I think I want to state that because I think it's something a little bit different than the typical utilities in Europe. And I think it's something, I think it's interesting to say that. For us, we have also the goal of emissions. But in our case, as I said, the goal of emissions applies to generation, but we have different goals of different kind of assets, also in distribution and also with the customers. And the thing I was trying to explain before is that it's excellent to have an overall goal of emissions in Europe. But if you go deep inside, and if we are talking energy efficiency it's sometimes about little things that you put in a big system, and you are going to gain a lot if you do that. So sometimes you need to think about the details, not only about the overall goals. That was I was trying to explain before.
I sense you're burning to say something. Yeah,
just one point. I think what's really important is that what the industry can bring to the energy efficiency debate is to develop more synergies between sectors, between industries, and I think this is something very important. And I can give you two examples. One example is increasing the synergy, for example, in our production plants. We use more and more renewable energies in our plants. And I think I can give two examples, one for Nissan in Mexico or Renault, the Morocco plant. We have seen that Morocco is quite advanced in a YNDC process, and we have introduced in Tangier a new vehicle plant where the carbon emissions are reduced by a factor of 85% compared to a conventional car, thanks to the use of biomass and wind energy. Second example is on using electricity in our vehicles, because clearly, and it was highlighted in the report that was released yesterday by the International Energy Agency on energy and climate change, using electricity in vehicles might benefit both from the power decarbonization and help reducing carbon emission from the transportation sector at the same time. So it is a kind of double benefit. So we have to increase and leverage investments on different sectors in order to find new synergies and have better carbon emission reductions than only in one single sector. I think that would be probably something that would be expected from the industry in the coming years.
I just want to take you up on the electric cars, because I know you don't want to pick winners, that's the whole premise, but electric cars have been dismissed. Mm-hmm. You're telling us that we have to take them very seriously, and compared with the emission standards we've had, which have made a huge difference, do you see electrification taking up as much of a position, especially in synergy with renewable energy?
Just to give one single number, in the past 4 years, Renault Nissan sold more than 240,000 electric vehicles. So 240,000 electric vehicles, that's quite a lot. And I mean, it's really developing very rapidly. If you take the example of Norway, it's already 14% market share. So it will not replace all conventional cars, but clearly there is some room for this. You know that the current new vehicle market worldwide is 80 million cars a year. It will be something like 100 million cars in about 3 years from now. 100 million new cars every year. So part of them might be electric vehicles, and will be electric vehicles for sure. 70% of the world population will live in cities by 2030. 70%. So clearly, electric vehicles will be part of the answer. And innovation technology synergies between sectors will help foster the introduction of electric vehicles.
And what would that mean for you? Will that rescue the utilities, who we all know have had a horrible time?
Well, in terms of electric consumption, it's not good news because we made some numbers and, for example, Navigant Research, I think it was the company that said that expected 16 million electric vehicles by 2023. And if you make some numbers about the electric consumption, that means 35.5 terawatts. That applies 0.17% of the electric demand of the world. So basically, we are expecting that thanks to the electric vehicles, we are going to increase our demand about 0.1%. So it's not that that good business for us, basically. The interesting business is related to the charging infrastructure and the business model related to that and the services that you can include that with the charging infrastructure, maybe with the customers, but not especially if we are thinking about electric consumption, is not a big deal for us, for our sector.
But isn't that exactly the problem? I mean, I was recently driving with a Tesla. It's not a Renault Nissan, unfortunately. The key issue is charging. Even if that's a car, they say 400 kilometers if you're driving 80, but why would you drive 80 in a car with 400 horsepower? The problem is charging. Charging, you have to find the charging places. If you find one, they have to be strong enough, they have to be fast enough, and last but not least, if you find one, you have to be able to pay. And it's completely ridiculous to me that in our world today, we are not even able to have one system to pay for all the charging stations. I mean, look at Denmark. It's a small country, but basically you have a card. It's named Smart or Clever Car, and you can put it at any station and you charge. And why shouldn't that be possible in Europe?
Yes.
Here, European Commission, yeah. This is ridiculous, in my opinion, that not even startup companies are coming up. There is some now coming up, but they have a hard time in talking to the utilities who own some. RWE, then a lot of municipalities, municipal utilities are owning it, Stadtwerke, local utility companies. There is so much you can do in order to foster that, and it also helps you then on the other end. I don't understand that.
You are completely right. First of all, just on a recharging infrastructure, because it's a very important point, and I really think that concerning electric vehicles, it will be a global ecosystem, and I think we have to develop the whole ecosystem, the ecosystem as a whole, and not only support the vehicles by themselves, but also the infrastructure. And we are part of many projects, for example, TNT projects on recharging infrastructure. But just to give you one single number, the number of recharging points in Europe by the end of 2014 was something like 23,000 recharging points compared to 113 fuel stations in Europe. 113,000 fuel stations in Europe. So you see there will be 40,000 recharging points at the end of this year. So there is some important development, but it will take time before it become as widespread as conventional fuels. And you are right, we have to find ways in order to have some simple ways for customers to recharge and pay for the electricity everywhere.
Yes, talking about that, because I think that you raise a good question. That's a very good example of what is happening of a lot of things here in Europe. And we have, a little living lab, for example, in Spain, because Spain is sometimes very similar than Europe. And Iberdrola, in each state of the country, the municipalities ask us for a different billing system for public charging infrastructure, different ones. So we have 18 in Spain, and in Europe we have, a wide spread of possibilities. Not a single idea, for example, comparing, and I don't want to say that this is the best way to do that, but it's a different way. For example, in the UK, the government decided to do that in a very, coordinated way. They had the TSB pilot projects, and then one of the regions decided to have some kind of RFID card that you can pay per month, and then the government in the Plug in Places program decided to do a white list, and they are trying to do the things at least in a structured way. In Spain, it's not the case. For example, in Spain, it's a very liberalized but not well organized process. And in Europe, it's more or less the same. For example, there was a very, very good, very interesting project that I think that we know was also in Green Emotion was called.
Yes.
It's a project related to charging infrastructure and interoperability between the different companies in Europe. And it was very interesting because we did get the interoperability, although we have different billing systems in the different countries. So I think it could be, again, for us, it's very important to have some kind of European, clear line to do these things, because we are really, really close one each other. So it should be something to take into account as well.
Well, there is some draft legislation on alternative fuels. We'll see. And I just want to ask a question about the efficiency, just to bring the topic back. Is an electric vehicle actually using less energy than a vehicle using conventional fuel, if you see what I mean?
The vehicle by itself, clearly yes, because electric engines are more efficient than the chemical conversion from liquid fuel to mechanical energy and then to electric energy. So clearly, fuel efficiency is more important. The only discussion on the energy efficiency of electric vehicles or the carbon emissions of electric vehicles compared to conventional vehicles is from well to wheels, depending on the production of electricity. And I think that this is something very important because, since there is a strong decarbonization trend of the electricity, an electric vehicle that you purchase today will have a better environmental balance tomorrow or in 5 years from now than today. This will not be true with a gasoline car or with a diesel car because the balance, the environmental balance will remain the same. So just because of the decarbonization of the power generation, the environmental balance is becoming better.
Yeah, if I may take this a bit to another area. Decarbonization is what our company is also doing. We have reduced 36% our CO2 emissions since 2009, so we are working hard as well. And we will continue that work. But I'd like to start a bit discussion on innovation, because this is what the keynote speaker also raised in his final slides, that this innovation is really vital. And for us in energy-intensive industry, and personally, I see this new innovation in new ways of doing materials, whether it be steel or other materials for needs of your respective companies, or innovation to produce paperboard or tissue that we are manufacturing. So to tackle the climate change problem, we really need breakthrough innovations, more innovations, so we can meet sustainably the needs of 9 billion people. And here I see that the EU's opening on this NER 400 fund, part of the ETS review, that is a positive element, and I'm glad that this time it's also will be allocated to energy usages, not just energy generation, and innovation is what we really need, in addition to smart systems and more efficient application of current technology. So we need all the spectrum available, and we need new ideas to solve this climate change issue.
Yeah, talking about innovation, for example, we noticed that it's something that you said before, that In Europe, we focus a lot in renewables, in big generation of renewables, big wind farms, and right now we are focusing as well in energy efficiency programs. In the United States, the problem that they have is that they are very high energy intensity values. So for the United States, a big problem. They are less competitive than us. And they are working a lot in programs about demand side management, about the customer management. So what we have decided is that it's not only a matter of technology, it's a matter of business model. So our venture capital company, called Perseo, it's right now looking around the world, different business models, not just different technologies, but different business models, in order to apply those in different markets in the moment that we decided that that market is mature enough to do that, because it depends on a lot of different issues. But we are working in that direction, because right now in Europe we have a lot of strengths, but in other places of the world they are working more than us in certain kind of, at least in the utility sector. So we are trying to gather all that ideas and do also innovation about that.
So, I mean, in Europe is an example of best practice. I mean, I keep thinking of Denmark as the pioneer in energy efficiency, but maybe everybody else on the panel is going to disagree with me. But is there a country that you look up to as the one that is the one to follow?
Maybe as being German, living in Hamburg and working in a Danish company, I can give a comment here. First of all, I think that, yes, Denmark has a nice geographic position. Of course, there is a lot of wind, and it's not too hot. So what they need is heating. And Denmark is more or less investing in district energy. So quite a lot of the energy is coming out of the ground by heat pump kind of solutions, but also a geothermal solution, meaning using the natural temperature in the earth to heat regions. And then they have district energy grids, and they can use that in both directions. In a heat pump format, you can also cool with that, of course, because the heating and the cooling system is just a reverse system, as you all know from your own fridge. Yeah? Behind the fridge, it's warm. Yeah? In the fridge, it's cold, and you can also turn that around. And that's then named the heat pump. Denmark has a very strong grid, and they have a very good regulation, so they have a very good demand response in Denmark. And if you have ever been in, I have been in this networking center in Copenhagen, where you see how much power is flowing to Sweden and to Norway and to Germany. So Denmark is a transit country, and thanks God we have it. Otherwise, the German grid would definitely collapse. Having said that, I would like to, now we're talking a lot about power and power consumption, electrical cars. One of the big untapped areas, especially in Europe, is heating. District energy, and I'm of course also saying that because Danfoss is a market leader in district energy, but if you look at Holland, only 3 or 4% of the heating is coming out of district energy, and they would have a lot of possibilities to do that. They could just take water. Water is a good source for together with a heat pump to produce heat, and they're not doing it. And in Germany, it's overall in Europe, I think district energy is 12%. We heard before that Eastern Europe has made tremendous steps in energy efficiency. And you know what it was? It was district energy. In Sochi, for example, when they built all these buildings a couple of years ago, they were all built with district energy. And the source of that is waste heat from factories, waste heat from your factory, for example, waste heat from garbage, burning down garbage, steel factories. And there is so much energy just going out into the air because we are not thinking in systems here. And for me, it's not rocket science. You don't need a lot of innovation. You can start now, just need a little bit more cooperation between the different entities.
I fully agree that on this district heating area, in Europe, certain countries are world leading, Denmark, Sweden, even Finland. So this leadership on global scale, maybe we should look at it in terms of technologies, that on which technologies is Europe the world leader, and I would like to raise paperboard products that our company is producing. They are really world's best and lightweight products, and we are, by the way, growing our exports to the United States markets quite rapidly right now, because they are not manufacturing as lightweight products there as we are doing here in Europe. But of course, remaining competitive and keeping a competitive edge on global markets, that's very hard continuous work, and we need our companies the ability to really allocate our resources in sufficiently freedom, with sufficient freedom. So I'm coming back to this, my point that we should not have too much regulation in Europe for keeping this competitiveness.
Okay, we note that. Go.
Yeah, I think that if I had to pick up one country, I would say Europe as a whole, and not only one single country. And I really think that we can be proud of what has been delivered in terms of, not only in terms of results, but in terms of targets, in terms of indicators, in terms of tests and procedures that are being used now in a lot of different markets worldwide. And for us as European companies, this is also sometimes a very important opportunity for exportation. So I would say that Europe as a whole has developed quite a lot of significant results. And what will be necessary in the next future would be to increase really the synergies and the exchange of best practices between industry sectors and not within one industry sector only. I think this will be something very important.
And there is also the sort of elephant in the room of energy efficiency in the existing building stock, which is not quite insoluble, but very hard. I mean, maybe this is something that Danfoss thinks about. It's where we're not on track EU-wide.
Yeah, this is of course an interesting topic. Talking about Germany again, there is a big lobby for insulation of buildings, which is actually not solving the root cause, but only the symptom. I think also in retro, meaning in rebuilding and upgrading buildings, there is still a lot of opportunities. Yes, it is expensive, we have heard that before, and the main issue is that there is not enough specialists in looking at the total system and being able to run such a project consisting of air conditioning, ventilation, some frequency converters to drive the elevator. I think that's the key issue, that we have a lot of specialists in heating, ventilation, in other areas, but there is too few. And I would also support a more system thinking here. And that is my wish to the policymakers, that we have to educate also our young engineers in becoming more holistic in their view. Some of them are specialists in electronic, in heating, in ventilation, but there is only a few. And we as a component supplier or a system supplier, I mean, we have just €6 billion revenue. I mean, we cannot do that everywhere in the world. We are trying to do wherever we can, in Denmark, in Europe, in Brazil, in US, in China, even in India. But we are a commercial company, so we are not. We also have to make a profit at the end. That would be my wish, that we educate our engineers in holistic thinking.
I mean, education is a good theme, and I'm sure it's the desire of many policymakers, but getting the right message across, as you know, we see the Eurosceptic debate, for instance, you can see some very strange projections of Brussels that people willingly believe. So how do you educate your customers?
Yeah.
Is that unanswerable.
No. I think education is something very important, and particularly on fuel efficiency and vehicle fuel efficiency. You know, now we have developed a lot of tools that help the driver to reduce its fuel consumption by improving the way he's driving the vehicle. So we have a lot of systems now which are embedded in our vehicles to decrease the fuel consumption by better educating the driver. And I think it's something very important, because sometimes you can achieve 15%, 20% fuel reduction. So education, of course, is very important. But, you know, our consumers are educating also us. And they are really pushing us to developing new technologies, customer-friendly technologies, because sometimes we develop engineer-friendly technologies, but not customer-friendly technologies. And I think that we have a strong customer push on innovation.
I fully agree. We are mainly in business-to-business products, and our customers are putting us hard targets to reduce our CO2 emissions and improve our energy efficiencies. Global companies like Unilever, Nestle are some of our biggest customers, and we are doing our best to match their requirements and enable them to reduce their emissions in their value chains.
The problem that we have is that electricity is a commodity, but the problem is that I don't know if it happens in other countries, but in a lot of our countries, the customers have problems to understand the bill. If you talk about euros, for example, as unit, or time as unit, it's very simple to understand. But kilowatt hour is not a very intuitive unit to understand.
Well, what is it exactly? How long does the light?
Exactly. So in terms of education, and in terms of it's something that it's hard for a company like us, because we are dealing with a unit that is not intuitive for anybody. So, and in terms of the end customer, not business or big customers, because big customers has a completely different perspective. But talking about the regular end customer, we have right now facing some competitors that, you know, years ago you couldn't imagine, like Google or like other kind of companies that right now are, you know, getting inside our business and trying to include, you know, this kind of hardware, you know, program hardware devices in the houses, just in order to control the consumption and things like that. So this push us a lot in order to use our big, you know,
Big data.
yes, the big information that we have. And push us also to be better in that way.
But, I mean, I'm coming back to Denmark, where it seemed that there was a very high education level when it came to energy, and that people actually did know what a kilowatt hour was and how many of them they used a year. So do you think that's true in your experience, and how did it happen?
I have no clue. I would have to ask Torben. You can ask Torben afterwards. He's from Denmark, but I think Denmark is a small country. They don't have. It's a trade country. They wanted to be independent early, so they have invested in these technologies to be independent, and this is part of the education.
It's about money too, as well, a desire to save
But
it.
I would like to say something provocative to you here. I predict that in the future, even in the private sector, but predominantly first in the semi-private sector, in the small company sector, in the mid-sized company sector, third parties will take over the energy bill in a certain building. Again, I have to quote California. There is companies collecting 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 households. They take over their equipment in the household for heating and air conditioning, and they're telling them you pay a flat rate of $100 per month, and you give it to me. And then they're doing two things. Number one, they upgrade the system because they are professionals. They understand the bill. They take that away from the private user. They upgrade the system, installing a drive and whatever, any kind of improvement. And then they sell the flexibility, and then they monitor the consumption in these private households. And then they sell the flexibility to utility. So because the utility needs the flexibility in peak times. Between 5 and 8 o'clock in the evening, they have 50% higher demand than during the day. And then exactly in this day, they switch off centrally the private households' power where they can. Yeah? So they make money, a business model out of two, saving by a flat rate, by improvement over the year. Like in your mobile telephone tariff where you have a flat rate, yeah? And the more they save cost, the more Vodafone earns. And it's exactly the same. And we are light years away in Europe from that behavior. And this is not only your fault, of course, because it's regulation, it is divided systems. But I know all the utility companies in Europe, also RWE, I think, they want to go into that business model. But I'm a little bit afraid that there is fast, small companies you have to catch.
No, but let me say, this is not a provocative comment, it's the reality. Because we are facing that not only in the United States, but also in Europe, because yes, RWE has an aggregation pilot project with Siemens, I think. And yes, the aggregation model, the aggregators of demand use special softwares in order to spread the benefit in each transaction through each customer, just to be sure that everybody is winning. But sometimes you win more than the other, and yeah, just we know that, and we are working on that as well. Yes, because we want to compete as well in that area. And we can do that in both sides, thinking about the demand, the customer, but also thinking about the generation. In Germany, for example, there's a lot of aggregators in generation. And yes, we are working in both sides. It's true that in California and in the United States, in the demand side, they are more creative than here, but it's true also that in Europe, in the generation side, we are much more. What you have in Germany, it's talking about aggregation models. It's quite impressive. So this is the near future that it's, and we need to be prepared to be competitive. So it's good because if that improve energy efficiency of the whole system, it's good for everybody, and we need to compete in that arena as well.
Yeah, the same is true in the car market, where we have seen quite a lot of new business models being proposed in the past few years. For example, 4 years ago, we heard about BlaBlaCar or new carpooling, car sharing projects. So I think it's also a very good way to enter and to develop new technologies for such new business models around individual mobility. And I think that you are right, increasing the occupancy rate of every single car helps, of course, to increase the energy efficiency of the whole system. So we have new business models are part of our world, because without introducing new business models, we will die, clearly. So that's also one of the reasons why the Renault-Nissan Alliance introduced on electric vehicles the battery leasing scheme, which is something completely new. We make a kind of package offer on the battery, electricity, and the vehicle. So there will be a lot of new business models, for sure.
But has it become much harder to make money? Because I think this underlines EU policy thought as well, that we want to have a circular economy, we want to have energy efficiency. So how is that compatible with economic growth and business growth? Or do we have to accept that it will be smaller?
It is just a clear demonstration and proof that it's part of an ecosystem. We are just now introducing global ecosystems. You said a holistic approach right before, but that's exactly the same. I mean, we will have more and more systemic approach, and systemic approach means that there will be a value chain, and there will be different stakeholders, different partners. And in fact, the different stakeholders have to become partners in order to increase the global efficiency of the chain.
Yeah, in my view, I come back to my earlier messages that the target should be to reduce CO2 emissions. So really the target is, in my view, not to reduce energy consumption. It's to reduce CO2 emissions. And if we would consume more energy in Europe to produce more goods for the global needs, so that could also be good for the globe. So we really need to think about the aims, and just reduction of energy consumption can sometimes not lead to the best solutions globally seen.
Yeah, I think also for you, and you mentioned it, as being an efficient producer, you are suddenly eligible as a customer of the big companies. I think it's a prerequisite that you are energy efficient in what you are doing. I mean, let's not dream. First of all, the global industry is driving energy efficiency. If you want to be the supplier to some of the big American companies, you have to prove that. I mean, they are not just there and don't care. That's absolutely not true. They have some of the toughest eligibility rules in the world. So for us, it's of course a bit easier because we are also producing in Europe, but not the majority of our products, and we are selling energy efficiency components, products, and solutions. And we can clearly see wherever we are in China, in the north of China, where we are taking the heat of a steel factory and putting it into heat recovery, and then heat the complete city out of this only factory. They don't need anything else anymore. Yeah? But this is a 5 years project, and it costs 1 billion, and we are seen as a specialist wherever we are. Why? Because Denmark has a very good reputation, because we have done it on ourselves. And I think generally European companies will in the future, because of the tough climate here to survive, they will have a lot of advantages when they go elsewhere, in my opinion. So I see it only positive. It's tough in the beginning, but it's the same at school.
Yeah. Great. Well, I'm going to ask the panel now one kind of wrap-up question, and then we'll see if anybody wants to say anything from our lovely audience. So we're going to try and predict the future and look ahead to 2030, the timescale that the EU is thinking about, and looking just so better that maybe we have to think beyond our own lives. But what do you think the biggest change will be in your sector in terms of how energy efficiency is happening? Who wants to go first?
Well, I spoke during all the panel about the smart grid, so it's obvious I'm going to say that. But no, being more specific than that, because it's a little bit more global. Energy storage. For me, energy storage, not only batteries, but other energy storage systems. It could be, a game changer from here to 2030. It could help to foster even more the renewables. It could help in the transport sector. It could be a game changer, basically, energy storage for me.
So I guess you might agree.
Yeah, no, clearly, I completely support that. I think that we have just started and announced last week a new project having electric vehicles being also able to re-inject electricity to the grid in order to better stabilize the grid and balance depending on peak and demand of electricity. I think that energy storage and the better use of all utility of the whole system will be something very important by 2030.
Yeah, as electrical and energy engineer, I agree with this energy storage, but from our industry perspective, 2 points. First of all, this Paris global negotiations, I really hope that we can achieve a global agreement which is equally binding and burdening across globe, because this would be a push for resource and energy efficient products. And then the second point is innovation, where we have leading products today already, and we are seeing that they are sustainable, energy efficient. There is a big demand for those in Europe, US, for example, where they don't have this kind of products. But then to develop new technologies, it's a risky investments, and this NER 400 element in the EU policies, I see this as a positive element to bring these, one tool to bring these breakthrough technologies that we really need globally.
Yeah, last but not least, I agree, of course, with all your comments, so I don't have to repeat that. From a Danfoss perspective, I think Energy Efficiency Directive is looking back, imagine 2030, then I'm 65 or something like that. Looking back, I would then believe that the Energy Efficiency Directive, the push we have with all the eco-design and rules, has been a reason for fast development. Personally, and as a Danfoss citizen, I believe that the combination of heating and cooling and what is coming out of the Energy Efficiency Directive will have made a significant change, especially by more use of district heating, but also heat recovery, because there's so much waste.
Thank you very much. From the audience, has anybody changed their own lives to become more efficient, or do you have any questions for our panel? You can have mine, it doesn't work.
Thank you. Alexandre Affet from BusinessEurope. Thank you very much for the very interesting debate you've made this morning. I think you've touched on many different aspects. Maybe there is one element which hasn't been so much discussed yet, is the finance aspect. And here in Brussels we have been discussing a lot of work has been done on FC, a Juncker investment plan. And so my question, and I know you already had a wrap-up question, but still I continue the debate. My question is, the four companies, have you been looking into the Juncker investment plan? And also more in general, what do you think about EU finance help you in terms of innovation for energy efficiency?
We have been looking into that, but more in order to push our customers to use it. Find these nice lighthouse projects, because lighthouse projects is the best way of showing that it works. And of course, lighthouse projects are per se at the beginning not profitable, so you need some funding and some support. So we are working with some of our customers to push them to utilize this opportunity, especially in cities, district heating installations, which require a lot of initial funding.
From our point of view, we need to have one business model, talking about finance, per country probably. Because in this sector right now, it depends on the regulation and of the support that you have. We have checked with, I think, all around the world, probably, well, not China, but about in China, all Europe and in the United States, probably 100% of the companies are viable and profitable with financial support from the European Union or from each country, or even with both. But usually without that, nobody can be cost-effective right now. But this is the usual thing that happens in all the new sectors in the world. So this is not bad news, this is the naked truth and the reality right now. But if you continue to support that sector, it's happening with wind energy, it's happening with solar panels. Right now are closer and closer to the grid parity. So this is the usual thing if something is new. But yes, from our point of view, that's naked truth. You need right now supports from the states and from the European Union.
I mentioned already this innovation fund, NER 400. So I think this financial support or resources to invest in new high-risk technologies, those are needed and really for pilot and demo projects and first industrial scale investments. Like we are investing in this 1.2 billion euro bioproduct mill in Finland, so we are getting some subsidy. It's from the Finnish government's funds as we are investing in high-risk, high-efficiency technology there. So for new technologies, I see support is needed for the investments. But I'm not in favor of subsidizing continuous investments like in the wind energy and solar. I think we have two massive supports in place in Europe, and equally I'm not in favor of having some energy efficiency type of market mechanism if you were thinking of this kind of direction. So I think this is part of the having too much frameworks, too much regulation in the EU, which would dampen our competitiveness. We as an energy-intensive company, we already have a lot of compliance things to do towards European Union. You know that well, being an energy generator tool. So please no more this kind of tools when related to our energy efficiency efforts. We will continue to invest in energy efficiency too. We must do to be sustainable, and that's a prerequisite, but with voluntary mechanisms and with a balanced regulatory framework, please.
What is very important for us in the new investment plan is clearly to accelerate the deployment of recharging infrastructure for electric vehicles. So we have supported the internal investments to produce the vehicles, but clearly for the alternative fuel energy directive and for electricity recharging infrastructure, the support of Europe is something very important. So we were part of different TAT projects. So with two different OEMs, we have already projects in the UK, in Ireland, in Nordic countries. We expect to get some feedback for new markets and new countries in July this year. So we think that's something very important because without recharging infrastructure, the development of those new technologies will become more difficult. So that's what we expect from Europe.
Does anybody else want to say anything? I've got one very quick question about it's not necessarily the best ending, but I'm just interested. Do you think green bonds have got any place in energy efficiency financing? A wild card. You can go away and think about it.
I don't think so. There is already enough financing. I mean, there is enough funds out there, green funds, and there is enough money. You can go for crowdfunding. I don't think so.
The matter is that I think that the sector doesn't need more money, but more time. Sometimes you need time you need time in order to get to reduce costs, and sometimes you need time. I think that it's not a good idea for our point.
Well, time's the one thing we don't have because the planet is impatient, and I think probably lunch is waiting. Is that correct? I don't want to make false promises. But well, thank you.